Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to my favourite 25 films of the 2010s. Now, as you may or may not know, modern cinema is not my forte, but here's 25 rather good films from the 2010s. It doesn't seem that long ago, but it's already quite a wee while ago. Again, this is just a bit of fun. These films are ranked though, so the number one is my favourite film of the 2010s, which if you know a little bit about my channel you might be able to guess, but by all means join in the fun and let me know your top 25 films ranked of the 2010s. You don't have to do all 25, of course. Now, but starting at number 25, this is a controversial choice because it is a film I just watched recently, but it had such an effect on me just because I kind of related to the character somewhat. Usually I don't really make a judgment on films until I've at least seen it twice. You can't really judge it on one watch, but I'm going to judge it in one watch anyway. So this is the 25th favourite film of the 2010s, and it's Chang Dong-lee's Poetry, the Korean filmmaker that I just recently watched 3 of his films for the first time, and they're all very good, but for me Poetry is actually quite special. It's about a grandmother who's looking after her grandson, who is a bit of a troubled teenager who gets into trouble at school, which I'm not going to go into, and the grandmother is forced to kind of come up with some money along with other parents who are affected by the situation, but she only works as a kind of part-time maid, part-time home help, and she's also struggling with early onset dementia and Alzheimer's, so she's forgetting simple words of things. The world around her seems to be going at a different speed than her, but she does go on a poetry class, but she's getting frustrated at why inspiration isn't coming to her instantly. As I said in my video, you can go see the video on the 3 Chang Dong-lee films that I did. To me, this is the one with the character that I connected with more than the other 2. Again, the other 2 are fantastic films as well, but Poetry to me is the standout because I did really connect and empathise with this woman as we're all getting older and beginning to forget things. So that's from Korea, number 25. Number 24 is a Hungarian film. I was going to say, and this is fairly recent, but technically these are all 2010 films, so they will be, or 2010s. So this is 2017's On Body and Soul, as I say, from Hungary. This is again another strange little film, but again I just connected with it. So it's about these 2 kind of, I don't want to say misfits, but 2 kind of loners who happen to work at an abattoir. They don't have anything to do with each other, but the company is going through a kind of psychology interviews, if you like, and both these people seem to be having the same dream that they're deer, not expensive, the four-legged animal kind of deer. But they've gone on to do each other, they don't really speak to each other, so why are they having the same dream? And there's another subplot, there's a break-in at the abattoir as well. And again, it's just about these two disparate people who don't really fit in, that have this bizarre connection. It's just really wonderful, strange, it's beautifully shot. Again, 116 minutes, you could argue it's a little bit slow and takes its time, but again, it's just, I just love being in that slightly odd world, and it's just a wonderful little film. Speaking of which, at number 23 is a documentary. There's actually a few documentaries on this list. It's Bill Morrison's Dawson City Frozen Time from 2016. This is a multi-stranded film. On one hand, it's about this bunch of films that were found up in the Yukon under an ice rink, and restoring some of them, and it kind of works as an exploration of the way films used to be distributed. So this was the end of the line as far as the studios sending out prints to all corners of the country. But then by the time they got to the Yukon, the studios didn't want them back, so they were pretty much dumped. And some of them have been restored, so it kind of forms part of a history not only of cinema and distribution and studios and things like that, but it's also a study of the gold rush and what happened at that little town. It's just an absolute joy and a wonder, and again, it's just one of those little documentaries that you don't think much about, but it actually works on so many levels, and it's just a fragment of history. And obviously film restoration wasn't a big thing back then, so like lots of it was just thrown into the river. The Yukon, the way people used to just throw the rubbish into the Yukon, they just threw all this film stock into so all this stuff was lost, but some of it was found and has been restored. It's an amazing film, and an amazing story, and one well worth checking out. And again, it's a wonderful second run release. Number 22 is from 2016, filmmakers that will appear twice on the list. And this is The Dardannes, The Unknown Girl. I fell in love with the Dardannes a few years ago when I did a series on their films. And this one in typical Dardenne style, all set in this little Belgian town, and the kind of social mores of that town. So this is a kind of up and coming young doctor who kind of works in a public practice, but has a future in kind of private practice and more successful practice in a better kind of neighbourhood. And one night when she's closing, a young girl comes to the practice looking for help, and the doctor turns her away, and it turns out that this young woman is then found dead, and this young doctor wants to find out what happened to her, and it kind of makes her reassess her life and her career goals, all done in the typical Dardenne style, i.e. no style, and it might not be their best work, we'll come to that later, but it's another really strong Dardenne film. And no doubt the Dardennes will appear in other top 25 decades as well. Next is from 2010, so it just qualifies. This is Kim Ji-woon's I Saw the Devil. This is a nice plain archive steelbook. This has two of the juggernauts, Choi Min-sik and Byung-seung Lee. And this is a rather bloody and nasty and brutal serial killer film. Choi Min-sik is the serial killer, and it is violent and bloodthirsty and quite nasty, but that's kind of the way serial killer films should be. It shouldn't be glamorous and slick, and I Saw the Devil is certainly brutal and well worth seeing if you have a strong stomach. Now number 20, from 2015. This is just such an underrated little film. This is Slow West with Cody Smith-McPhee and Michael Fassbender. This is an absolutely beautiful western. It just has those yellows and browns. It was actually shot in New Zealand, directed by John McClane, and Cody Smith-McPhee is the boy travelling from Scotland who wants to find his true love, and picks up Michael Fassbender as a kind of guardian angel, if you will, as they track down his true love, or who he thinks is his true love. It's just an absolutely beautiful film. It's a road movie, as they cross different landscapes and different geographies. And one of the things that I love about it is at the end of the film, we kind of cut to all the collateral damage that happens throughout the film, and there's a real sense of loss and the price that's been paid in human terms of this character's journey across America to find what he was looking for. Whether he does or not, you'll have to watch the film. Next, number 19 from 2012. It's Dread. And this just because it gives me an excuse to show off this wonderful lenticular. It's a Nova Media Steelbook. Dread, not the Sylvester Stallone. This is a Carl Urban where he doesn't take his mask off. It's just 90 minutes. Lena Headey as the villain cuts a wonderful figure. And this is just more like the comic book, more like 2000 AD. It's just one story. It's one of those films that really needed a sequel, but kind of glad it didn't get a sequel. We'll come to another film on the list like that as well. It's just a wonderful, looks gorgeous. It's simple, it's straightforward. There's no great depth to it. It's stylish, but it's really enjoyable, and it is a literal blast. Next is arguably my favourite filmmaker from the 2000s, and that is from 2011. This is Yorgos Lanthimos' Alps. His Greek films are wonderful because he doesn't really explain anything. Obviously, his American films, they kind of explain themselves a bit more, whereas Dogtooth, Alps, Ginetta don't really explain themselves. You have to kind of figure it out as you go along. This is wonderful, about a group of people called the Alps, who, when people have deaths in their family, they substitute themselves for the person that's died. Sounds strange, and it is strange, but it just has that creepy Lanthimos kind of pace before he went all kind of Kubrick-like in his last three American ones, as far as the look of them. this is just wonderful, and this is his kind of troupe of Greek actors before he came to Hollywood, and now Emma Stone and Willem Dafoe seem to have become his consistent troupe of actors. Next, from 2018, is Shinya Tsukamoto's Killing. This is a 3, a couple of shorts as well as Killing. Tsukamoto, we'll hear more from him in the 2000s list. But Killing again is really simple. It's a period piece. As with all Tsukamoto films, it's low budget because he has to work in that kind of level. He stars in it as a samurai, and this is about the whole attitude of killing and having to fight, and is it all worth it, and machismo. It looks gorgeous. It's a very green film as far as lush forestry, but it's beautifully shot, wonderful composition, and it's one of Tsukamoto's best. But here it's only number 17. Number 16 from 2014 is Lenny Abrahamson's Frank, again with Michael Fassbender. I love this film so much that I've got 2 plain archive editions of it. This is just absolutely wonderful. It's got a great soundtrack. It's about Domhnall Gleeson, who is completely talentless but wants to become a star rather than an actual songwriter, musician. He just wants to be a star, and through various stars aligning, pardon the pun, he becomes involved with this band who are led by Michael Fassbender, who wears this head all the time and never takes it off. And he's surrounded by Maggie Gyllenhaal and all these strange characters, and they go to record this album in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. It's just absolutely wonderful. It's about ambition. It's about that whole kind of pop idol, American Idol, that whole thing of I want to be a star but I don't actually have much talent. And Gleeson really kind of embodies that. He's not a particularly likeable character because again he just wants to be a star, and it's evident he's got no talent whatsoever, but through his kind of manipulation of social media, you know, he somehow jumps onto this bandwagon of this obscure band and tries to push them into the limelight. It's also a beautiful study of mental illness. And again, if you're fascinated by how music is created, the whole creative process and how to get inspiration, it's just a beautiful film. It absolutely blew me away. Again, it's got a great score and soundtrack, which I have in CD. It's a great performance by Fassbender, even though we never see his face. And it's just fantastic. If you're a fan of Zappa or Captain Beefheart, then kind of the music might float your boat as well. But then there's a crushingly sad song at the end. It's just an absolutely wonderful film. So from 2014, we're back to Hungary. And this is White God. This was one of the first films I did a random review of on the channel. I absolutely love this film. It's about a little girl who's forced to go and live with her father, with her beloved dog, but her dad doesn't like dogs, and her dog ends up getting lost and gets involved in dog fighting and all manner of things, and it's about the relationship between humans and dogs and how we treat them. It's definitely not a Disney film, but fortunately they make it very clear that no dogs were hurt in the making of this film. Great dog performances, and it teaches us all a good lesson in how we should treat our little or big four-legged friends. So that's White God from 1915. No, at number 15 from 2014. At 2017, at number 14 from 2017. This is way too complicated. It's Lanthimos again, and it's a killing of a sacred deer. You could argue his last great film. The Favourite and Poor Things, which I just watched, are both very good. But they're not peak Lanthimos, but he's still keeping that batting average up. I've still got high hopes for the man. This is Colin Farrell. We'll hear more from him later. And Nicole Kidman. This is another really creepy, under your skin, slowly developing Lanthimos. This is shot very much with an eye on Kubrick. It is just beautiful about this strange relationship between the doctor, Colin Farrell, and Barry Keoghan, before he was famous, as a son of a patient of Colin Farrell, and how he kind of inveigles, which isn't actually a word, but he inveigles his way into the family, and it's very uncomfortable and strange. I mean, Lanthimos is pretty much one of the last few provocateurs of cinema. If you look at his films, there's generally 5-star ratings and 1-star ratings, and not very much in the middle, which is a good thing. At number 13 is a film that, when you first watch it, the first half of it, you think, this is alright, but I've seen it all before. And then it kicks into a completely different gear in the second half. Of course, it's One Cut of the Dead, which starts off just being a run-of-the-mill zombie film, but then it changes into something a lot more worthwhile, with a bigger heart, and something that will put a smile on your face. I haven't seen the Hollywood Cut of the Dead, which I've heard isn't really that bad, but I would rather just see the original. Again, a zombie film that will put a smile on your face because it turns into something a little bit different. At number 12 is a film that's hard to believe it's almost 10 years old. It will be next year. And I know it's terribly mainstream, but Mad Max Fury Road is the best Mad Max film in my opinion. My opinion is not fact. It's simple. It's ridiculously simple. It's lots of characters go that way, and then lots of characters come back the same way that they came. But just from a practical effects, because apart from some CGI storms, it was pretty much all done practically. There's lots of tension on the set. Charlize Theron and what's his face, Tom Hardy, hated each other, and strangely enough the film turned out brilliant. Again, at the time everybody complained because it's not a Mad Max film because it's about Charlize Theron, but Mad Max 2 and Mad Max 3 weren't really about Mad Max either. We'll see what the Furiosa prequel is like, but I doubt it's going to be any better than that. You can watch it without the volume because the dialogue's not really that important. See it on a screen as big as possible, because it is one of the few kind of modern, it's not really a blockbuster because it's not that big, but it is kind of visually stunning and all the more impressive because again most of it's practical. From Mad Max to something just as barking. This is from 2013, and when I say barking, obviously it's Jodorowsky. This is The Dance of Reality, even though I could have put Endless Poetry, the sequel to it, in this as well. This is Jodorowsky's Alchemy, showing his early life in Chile. So he, as a boy, is played by his grandson. His son plays his father. His mother, who always had dreams of being an opera singer, is played by an actor who sings all her lines. It just has that blend of Jodorowsky ridiculousness. Don't worry, there's amputees in it. You know, that's the Jodorowsky hallmark. But through all the madness, through all the weirdness, at the end it might be his most moving film. And again, it is the alchemy of Jodorowsky, that it is actually moving at the end despite all the madness. Again, I did a Jodorowsky season that you can check out all the videos on the channel. But Dance of Reality is one of his masterpieces, and again I could have put the follow-up Endless Poetry, which shows him as a teenager, well, maybe a little bit older than a teenager as well. That's just full of stunning imagery also. So we're in the top 10 now. So at number 10 from 2013, it's Jim Jarmusch's Only Lovers Left Alive with the wonderful Tilda Swinton, and that bloke from the Avengers, but he's not actually that bad in this. But Tilda Swinton's fantastic. John Hurt's also in it. It's Jarmusch's vampire film, but because it's Jarmusch, you know his vampire film isn't going to be like Blade. Obviously he did a zombie film, not quite as successfully, Dead Don't Die, which also had Tilda Swinton. This really has a kind of melancholy, elegiac sense to it. It's got a great score. It's about, and it kind of shows an aspect of vampirism that nobody, or very few people, kind of touch on. The fact that, you know, Tilda Swinton's character is 400 years old. Tom Hiddleston's character is like 200 years old. So they have all this access to all this literature and music. You know, Hiddleston writes these songs and all. He's had like 200 years of, you know, finding all this music, and so it really kind of focuses on that, because again, it's Jarmusch, so it's going to be not your standard vampire film. Jeffrey Wright turns up and has a wonderful little performance as the doctor that Hiddleston steals blood from. Some of it's in Detroit, and again that's kind of decay, pure Detroit, and some of it's in Tangiers, and again it has that different kind of flavour. It's just an absolutely beautiful film. It looks gorgeous, it sounds gorgeous, and it's wholly wonderful. Number 9, and we're travelling the globe in this list a little bit. So from 2019, from Finland. Again, this film really spoke to me. This is Dogs Don't Wear Pants. For some reason it's an 18, I have no idea why. A film by Jukka-Pekka Vakalpa. Obviously SGS Arts will actually let me know how to pronounce that properly. Again, this is just a beautiful little film about a single father who lost his wife in a drowning accident, and he has a bit of survivor's guilt and also still needs to look after his daughter. So he ends up going to a dominatrix who gives him a little bit of suffocation, and whenever he's right on that edge of being suffocated, he does have flashbacks and sees visions of his wife, and that kind of makes him feel oh, not necessarily a little bit better, but he can see his wife again at the point of strangulation or asphyxiation, and it just follows his journey. It's a moving tale. Granted, there is some DIY dentistry, which might be a little bit difficult for people to watch, but again, it is really chaste and moving. I mean, it's an 18, and it actually says in the back 18 for strong sex, but it's not. It's just sadomasochism, really. It's not that strong, I wouldn't say. But in the end, it is actually cathartic, and it's actually quite moving in the ending as it kind of reaches some kind of peace. And it just really struck a chord with me. And it is a beautiful little film, and it's a great title as well, Dogs Don't Wear Pants. At number 8, a film that literally blew me away, and that's Butt Boy, Assume the Position. This is the moving story of a man, while getting a proctology exam, realises he quite likes the sensation of a finger going up his bottom, and then starts to put things up his bottom, including the family dog. And a baby goes missing in the neighbourhood. Cut to years later, and Chip, the main character, is now a sponsor in AA, and he's a sponsor for Detective Fox, who likes his alcohol, and Detective Fox starts getting the idea that maybe Chip is responsible for new things disappearing, potentially up Chip's bottom. This film is low budget, but it kind of looks like a Michael Mann film. So it's like a Michael Mann film about a cop and a criminal who sticks things up his bum. But it's done really seriously. I mean, the guy who plays the detective is going full blown 70s hard bitten cop. It just made me laugh. But again, it just looks so good. There's a scene later on in the film, and it's similar to scenes in Collateral with Michael Mann, like at an electrical power station or whatever. It's just beautifully shot. It has an explosive ending, and it's just absolutely wonderful. I can't recommend Butt Boy enough. Perhaps not everybody's sense of humour, but it's absolutely magnificent. Next is a film that I should absolutely hate, but I've probably seen it at least about 10 times. This is from 2016. It's a film that whenever I think about it, I end up watching because it's just so enjoyable. And it's The Nice Guys by Shane Black, starring Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling, who are two actors I'm not a huge fan of, but their chemistry together is just brilliant. Granted, there's a moment where Ryan Gosling's trying to be Lou Costello a little bit too much, but it's just so wonderful. Again, I did a video a couple of years ago on films that deserved a sequel, but I'm glad they didn't get one. But The Nice Guys certainly deserved a sequel. Could watch more films of this partnership, even though it probably wouldn't be as good as this. The story is labyrinthine enough. Keith David, Kim Basinger give good support as well. Again, it's a film I really shouldn't like, but I absolutely adore it. I can watch it. I might go and watch it after this video. It's it's just so enjoyable, and their chemistry is just so wonderful. And is it Angourie Rice, who I think is in the remake of Mean Girls? She plays Ryan Gosling's daughter, and she's absolutely fantastic in it. It's just a Hollywood film that actually works, and isn't really annoying. It says in the back by somebody from IGN, whatever that is, Lethal Weapon for a New Generation. I'd actually say it's better than Lethal Weapon. I know that might be sacrilege to some people, but from 2010, another film that absolutely blew me away, and very much like Lanthimos. What would have happened to Lanthimos if he kept just making Greek films? You wonder if this filmmaker had kept making films with subtitles instead of going to Hollywood. It's Denis Villeneuve's last non-English language film, Onward. This is an absolute stunner, about how war makes victims of us all. A young brother and sister are asked by their mother to go back to an unnamed Middle Eastern country to try and find their father, who they thought was dead, and their brother, who they didn't know existed. Again, this is just absolutely beautiful. I mean, most Denis Villeneuve films are, whether you like his Hollywood films or not. And it's very hypnotically paced. And then when the revelations come, they kind of hit pretty hard. I mean, again, you kind of get people who watch films and they try and guess everything that's going to happen. But I prefer just to go with it and don't really switch that part of my brain on. And Onward slapped me in the face like a big kipper. And it's just a beautiful film. And as much as I like pretty much all of Villeneuve's American films to a lesser or greater extent, Onward for me is his truly great film. So next is one I've only got on a DVD disc, which I haven't dug out. And again, this is a film I've mentioned before. I did a random review of it. This is from 2011, and this is Dreams of a Life. Again, this is a film that struck a chord with me personally, because it's really a film made for people who do live alone. It's about this young woman in London who was found dead, essentially melted into her carpet, surrounded by Christmas presents that she had made up and was in the middle of wrapping to herself. And it really, through reconstructions of people and events, interviews with people who knew her, it's pretty much how can somebody who on one hand seemed to be popular, seemed to have friends, colleagues, work colleagues, but then she just completely disappeared off the radar. And again, there was pretty much 2 years of posts and bills stuck behind her door before she was found, as I say, melted into the carpet. It's really a film that gives you perspective, or too much perspective, as Spinal Tap might say, and kind of perhaps prompts some people, if you haven't heard from somebody you used to know, maybe you should send them a postcard or send them a text just to ask how they're doing. It's a beautiful, horrible little film with a haunting, frozen last frame. Again, I doubt very much that's ever going to get a Blu-ray. It's certainly never going to get a Hollywood remake, because it is bleak AF, as the kids might say, but it's certainly worth watching and then crying yourself to sleep later. And oh look, at number 4, here's another happy-go-lucky documentary from 2012. This is The Act of Killing. I have said in the past that this might be the greatest film of the 21st century. This is just absolutely brutal. You're better to watch the director's cut. The theatrical cut's 115 minutes, the director's cut's 159, and that just gives you more depth. So this is about Indonesia in the 60s, and anybody who was a communist or anybody who read books or teachers or whatever were essentially killed by gangsters. So Josh Oppenheimer also did The Look of Silence, which was released later but was shot before this. He speaks to 3 of these guys that killed probably about 200 people, but gets them to relive the murders by acting out gangster films and musicals, because that was the kind of thing that was playing in the cinemas at the time. So they would kill people and go to the cinema. In this film, half the time you're going, this really isn't morally right. Why on earth are we watching this? And then 3/4 of the way through, something happens. One of the 3 guys kind of has an epiphany, and it is just one of the most amazing things in cinema you'll ever see. It's just a phenomenal work, absolutely horrific. As they describe what they do, they describe how to choke people with wire and stuff like that. I mean, it's bleak stuff. It is funny because in the back it is an E, exempt for classification, because it's a documentary or something. But it is absolutely brutal. A lot of the people who worked on it are credited as anonymous. It's the same in The Look of Silence. There's a lot of the Indonesian crew that are credited as anonymous because they don't want the repercussions. It's just absolutely amazing. There's a commentary with Werner Herzog, because Werner Herzog and Errol Morris, who have done quite a few pretty decent documentaries in their time, they were just blown away by it as well. So the act of killing, it's just phenomenal, and it kind of shows what cinema can do, the special things that cinema can do. So we're in the top 3. These are very special. These are all masterworks, but they also kind of speak to me on a personal level as well. At number 3, to me, is my favourite film by director brothers that I mentioned earlier, and it's 2 Days, One Night by the Dardennes, starring Marion Cotillard. This is a plain archive, very pink edition. I've sadly also got it in Criterion. This is a phenomenal film, again with the Dardennes. It's really simple. Marion Cotillard plays a woman who's coming back from sick leave, but her boss has said the only way he can afford to bring her back to work is if her work colleagues forgo their bonus of €1,000. And she spends 2 days and 1 night trying to ask people not to take their bonus so she can come back to work. Again, it's something that pretty much we can all relate to. I love the fact that it's €1,000. It's not like, $500,000. It's not something ridiculous. But again, €1,000, unless you're a certain kind of person, would help all of us. But again, it means somebody's not going to get their job back. So you can automatically put yourself in that situation on either side of it, and everybody has reasons. And again, it's just brilliantly acted, as Dardenne films are, because it's not really acting, even though it's acting. Such a simple concept, but it's really powerful, and it's just absolutely fantastic, and it'll always be relevant. So at number 2, from 2013, directed by somebody called Pasolini, but it's not Pier Paolo, it's Uberto. Again, this is a film that really struck a nerve with me. The first time I watched it, I was weeping like a small child at the end of it. The second time I watched it, I was still weeping like a small child. This is Still Life with Eddie Marsan. And again, you may watch this and it will just have no effect on you whatsoever. That's the beauty of cinema. So this is from 2014. It's only 88 minutes long. And Eddie Marsan is, one of the most underrated character actors in the business. But he plays a guy who works for the council, whose job it is to arrange the funeral of people who die and their relatives can't be found. And his job is to try and find relatives. But if he can't find them, then obviously they just get buried, and he's usually the only person in attendance. And again, very much like Dreams of a Life, you can, if you live on your own, Dreams of a Life and Still Life make a happy-go-lucky double bill. But this is just a beautiful film. So he's on one of these cases of somebody who's died, and he tries to track down their family so people can actually come to the funeral and arrange the funeral. It's just an absolutely wonderful performance, great performance by Marsan, and it's just an absolutely wonderful film. Again, the chances of this getting a Blu-ray is pretty slim. You could argue it's not that cinematic as far as composition and look, but certainly the last scenes are pretty cinematic. But if you're like me, which hopefully none of you are like me, you might need some Kleenex at the end. So we come to my favourite film of the 2010s, and again, if anybody knows my channel, they'll probably be able to guess. Again, it is from a director that's already been on the list twice. It is, of course, The Lobster by Yorgos Lanthimos. This is another film very much like Still Life and 2 Days, 1 Night and Act of Killing and On Sunday, and Butt Boy, that absolutely blew me away. Colin Farrell, again, not an actor I'm a huge fan of, but he's absolutely brilliant in this. Rachel Weisz is wonderful in this. John C. Reilly, Olivia Colman. It's Leah Seydoux before she was famous. Ben Whishaw. It's an absolute masterpiece. From the first moment that there's a woman driving in the rain, and she gets out and shoots a donkey, you're in for something special. It's all about relationships. And they go to, all the single people have to go to a hotel in the country, and if they don't pair up within 40 days, you get turned into an animal. And that's why it's called The Lobster, because somebody wants to be a lobster when they're reincarnated. As Olivia Colman says, usually everyone wants to be a dog, that's why there's so many dogs. It's just an absolute masterpiece. Again, it's not for everybody. The sense of humour isn't for everybody. There is a bit of animal cruelty, even though it's actually, you have to think of it as a person, not an animal, because it is a person that hasn't paired up and has been brought back as an animal. It's just a masterpiece. So paradoxically, as much as I would like Lanthimos to go back to making films in Greek, my favourite one of his films is in English. But there you go. So thanks very much for watching my favourite 25 films of the 2010s. Hopefully you'll join me on the next 25, which may be the 2000s. Please let me know what your top 25 are, or if you like any of the films in my top 25. And hopefully you'll join me again, as I say, as I continue this journey through the decades. There seem to be quite a lot of decades. Seem to be a lot more decades than there were 30 years ago. Maybe it's just me. So this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.